Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of the Brett and Matt Show. As always, I'm Matt, he's Brett, and we're doing our NFL Draft 2015 review. So what just transpired last weekend, and today is already Thursday, so it feels like that.
It started
like
a week ago.
Old news, but I mean, guys are getting brought in for rookie orientation stuff, and they're already meeting with their teams and whatnot. But yeah, nonetheless, I mean, overall, I feel like, God, as a fan watching the draft that first day, I mean, you and me, we get into the drafts quite a bit. And I got to say, like, I was a little disappointed with the lack of movement. Like, no one was moving, it felt like.
Yeah, well, we got our first trade when San Diego, I think, traded up for Melvin Gordon, right? And that was only to jump 2 spots. And then I think we had Denver and somebody else flip-flop places. I forget who they flipped with, but I think that was about it. And there was rumors, too, that New England was getting ready to switch out of their pick. And they were going to just drop out of the first and take some second-round picks, so reportedly from someone like Houston or something like that. But when the Colts passed on Malcolm Brown, the defensive tackle from Texas, New England had to stay because he was too good of an option to pass up at that point.
Definitely. And all day, like leading up to the draft that night, you'd heard rumors that pretty much the Titans were just shopping their pick. And in fact, there were so many rumors going around. It literally felt like there's no way that the Titans are going to keep that pick. Like they're going to trade it for something, and there's going to be some other team that trades up and gets Mariota, and then nothing happens. And
you mean Mariota?
Mariota, yeah, right. So not that I want to say like I was disappointed in the pick because it means that I got the pick right, so that made me happy. But on the same note, I was really hoping something crazy would happen and someone would trade up. And I guess, I guess the Titans just felt like the value that they were trying to get wasn't going to be good enough for or worth to them what Mariota would be. So they stuck with it. Obviously. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you believe some of like the rumored proposals, though, like Tennessee might have actually really messed up there. It sounded like Philly was willing to give up some firsts and a couple of players, a couple of decent players too, like a guy like I think it was Michael Kendricks, who's a middle linebacker, and there was someone else rumored to be in the mix. And then Chicago was apparently interested as well. Rumors of maybe including like Cutler and Forte in a trade, which maybe isn't as sexy as what Philly was giving you, but with the extra additional picks and everything, it would have definitely been something to consider. But it sounded like what Chip Kelly said is they went driving by looking for a new home and they saw the prices in the neighborhood and then just got out. So it was kind of like just Tennessee apparently had way too high expectations on what teams should be giving out for that spot.
Yeah, and not that I want to call the owner of the Washington Redskins maybe not super smart, but he did give up 3 first-round picks for RG3, obviously, and to acquire RG3, and you just gotta wonder if a team wasn't quite willing to do that because that's a lot of value. I was disappointed that there wasn't that trade made, and then another surprise I thought was Gurley going number 10 to the Rams. Like, shocker. Like, did not see that coming. I thought Gurley would maybe go like top 15, but I think when he went number 10 overall, that's part of the reason we saw the Chargers make a move up to get Gordon, because all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, well, there's a lot of teams that could really use a running back like Melvin Gordon. And that whole perception that the running back is doesn't need to necessarily have a first-round pick spent on them. I think with how talented these two guys were, I think there was very little doubt that they were both going to go in the first round.
Yeah, that wasn't much of a surprise for me either. We kind of had all been projecting that to happen. I mean, obviously, it's the first time in a couple of years we had one, let alone two, get selected in the first round. I think Trent Richardson might have been that draft class was the last one that had a guy drafted in the first, and there was, I think, another guy or two that was actually selected in that year's draft as well in the first round at the running back position. But yeah, you look at it; these two guys, I think, were some of the better ones, if not obviously the best ones in the last couple of years to come out at the spot. Game-changing type guys, especially once they get the ball in their hands. Slightly different ways. I think Gordon, a little bit smoother of a runner. Don't get me wrong, Gurley's actually probably just as fast as Gordon is, and he's got runs with a little bit more power too, which is why you saw him go higher. It was just the injury concern coming into it, but it looks like he checked out on that, so we're doing pretty good on that. But yeah, number 10, that was shocking. I figured offensive line. Now the Rams basically spent the rest of the draft then going after the offensive lineman, kind of like we'd all predicted. I think we gave them an offensive lineman round one.
We gave them, yeah. Yep.
I think they spent 3 picks then after that on offensive linemen. We'll get into that a little bit later once we start getting into each division's breakdown. But, yeah, that definitely made Melvin Gordon move up a little bit, who I thought was probably going to go in the 20s, not 15. And then I think that also helped, T.J. Eldon a little bit, maybe not a lot. Oh, maybe that didn't affect him at all. But he did go early in the second round.
He went early second round, yeah.
He went to the Jacksonville. So, I mean, we're that close to actually having 3 guys, if you think about it, being in the top 35, 36 picks at a devalued position. So maybe it's just a great year for running backs. Actually, it was a great year. A lot of these guys are going to help out a lot. And Tevin Coleman going to third round, I think, was a big surprise. But he's going to help Atlanta out a lot, too, and he might start right away. Again, something we can talk about later.
Yeah, so with that said, let's get into our division breakdowns, and we'll start with the NFC East. So obviously, of all the teams, kind of the shocking one was, I think, from most people's perspective, were the Cowboys obviously made a pretty big splash in drafting Randy Gregory out of Nebraska. The guy just kept sliding and sliding and sliding, and just crazy to think that I feel like just even months ago, like he was projected as a top 10 player and fell, clearly way into the second round. But overall, the Cowboys did a good job to help themselves. They obviously got the really athletic cornerback, Byron Jones. Should be able to plug in, and I don't think the Cowboys intend on keeping Maurice Claiborne around anyways. So I'm pretty sure they didn't pick up his option, his 5th-year option. So I think my guess is Jones will get to see probably some slot cornerback position for a while, and he'll probably be groomed to take over the other starting spot at some point. And obviously with a guy like Gregory, who's as talented, and if he can, keep his off the field troubles away from him, he could turn out to be a heck of a pickup as well. So
definitely. I think if you're going to talk about Dallas's draft too, you have to consider, they did just sign Collins. They agreed to a deal with him. So, that's the offensive lineman, Lyle Collins at LSU, who fell, possibly was going to be a first-round pick before that whole murder situation. But now that he's on the team, if you're looking at that, like maybe the first 2 picks I really liked from Dallas, if they didn't take a running back, which I thought was probably a big position need for them. But that offensive line now, especially if Collins doesn't get in trouble and you can stick him in there at right tackle after, whether or not Doug Free plays this year. But after that, Collins and the rest of the offensive line is going to be a really solid front. You don't really need to take a guy that high, I think, to get some production out of the running back spot.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And considering they decided not to draft any running backs, they clearly feel just fine with who they have.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're going to go with Darren McFadden.
McFadden and Joseph Randall or whatever his name is.
Yeah, I wonder who's going to be the starter and who's going to be the change of pace guy. Either way, I don't think McFadden's going to play the whole year. So probably going to play quite a bit.
Looking at the Giants draft, they got some help at offensive linemen, and they took Landon Collins, the safety out of Alabama, who a lot of people projected as possibly the top safety, definitely the top strong safety, if you will. And then, with those 2 picks, they're going to be able to hopefully protect Eli a little better, so maybe he can throw the ball to Odell Beckham Jr. And obviously on defense, they needed safety. And then another guy they also got, well, I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name, so I'm just.
Odigizua.
Yeah. So, I mean, and they got that guy too who has some potential. So, overall, I think the Giants helped themselves as well. Also, I guess before I get too far, I would give what grade would you give the Cowboys?
Factoring in the fact that they got La'el Collins without using a draft pick or having to spend any money on him, I do like those first 2 draft picks, like you mentioned. They got probably 3, and if you can count on like production from any of the other guys, 3 or 4 solid contributors out of this draft, it looks like. I think that's a pretty solid draft. I'd give it a B+.
Wow, I was gonna go A- on that one. We obviously both think pretty good of their draft. So, but where I was going with the Giants was, so I mean, we just named those players. I think they had some guys that'll be able to step in and help their team. So I think I would give the Giants probably I think a B-. Not a bad draft. Probably not the best draft, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and while you look at their draft too, they only had 6 picks, it looks like. I thought maybe they reached a little bit for Flowers, especially with where some of the other offensive tackles that were, depending on, the scouts that you look at and read and their opinions on things. There's that kid from Pittsburgh. I think he slid to like the 3rd or 4th round, TJ Clemmings, so maybe you could have grabbed somebody else, at number 9 instead of Flowers that would be equal later in the draft in the 2nd round. But I mean, Collins there at the top of the 1st or 2nd, was a good pick as well. So yeah, I'm not super high on that draft. Probably I'll C-. No, I'll give it a C. We'll just keep it at a C, not a minus. They don't need to be that close to a D.
So the next team would be the Philadelphia Eagles, who kind of been a busy offseason for them. They didn't do any crazy trade to acquire Mariota. So it'll be interesting to see how their draft pans out. But I gotta say, I really like the receiver. And once again, I'm not gonna pronounce his name right, so I'm just gonna say the wide receiver at USC I was high on before. I think he was a really good pick for them. They got Eric Rowe out of Utah, I believe, as well. He's a guy that'll be able to step in and help them a lot. They definitely went defensive back heavy, though. Looking at their selections, I mean, yeah, Rowe, and they did get linebacker Jordan Hicks, but then they went corner. So they're clearly trying to address some secondary help. I don't know. What are your thoughts on their class?
Yeah, I like the top 3 guys for sure. Honestly, don't know much about those corners, and Ja'Cory Shepherd and Randall Evans. I'd have to look into that a little bit, but those guys are like 5th, 6th round guys. So, I mean, you can't probably expect much, but at least Philly's looking into the secondary because that was one of their biggest issues last year. So just bringing some guys in that they felt good enough about, spending a pick on has to be a positive. And that kid from USC, Nelson Aguilar, I don't know, again, wrong to say his last name. I think he's going to be really good, not only as a receiver, but he brings some return skills too, which you can't underestimate, especially after you've lost guys like, Macklin and Deshaun Jackson the last couple of years. So to get a guy that has return game, add some extra value to that. So I think I'd probably give their draft like a B.
Okay. I think I'm going to give their draft a B as well. I like their drafts. The last team in the NFC East is the Washington Redskins, and they went with they had some options at where they picked. Leonard Williams fell in their lap, and they decided to go with probably the best overall offensive lineman in the draft in Sheriff out of Iowa. So obviously they plan on just plugging him in and a guy that will be able to protect RG3 or whoever else. Some other guys they got, though, they also got running back Matt Jones and wide receiver Jamison Crowder. So, I mean, I feel like they got some guys that'll be able to help their team right away. And obviously they need some help right away. They weren't exactly picking very high or picking low. I mean, they're obviously picking high for a reason. So I don't know. In my opinion, the thing I like the best is they did get a big, powerful offensive lineman to help shore up that offensive line.
My thing with them is, I mean, a guard. Essentially, I think that's probably where Scherff's going to end up. Might be a guard. Is that worth like a number 5 pick, like 5th overall? I mean, I get it that he might be the best, but could you not have like traded down if you could have found a trade partner?
That's a good point. Or you could have just taken Leonard Williams, who a lot of people thought was the best defensive player in the whole draft, and then all of a sudden you would have looked like you got a really good steal. But yeah, I understand your argument about the guard situation. Yeah, that's tough, I guess.
I mean, but outside of that, Preston Smith should be an all right guy. Jamison Crowder's got some ability, and then there's that Kouandjio, who's I think Cyrus Kouandjio's brother, who is
you're right. Yep.
himself. Yep. So at least that's got some pedigree going, and then a bunch of like late 6th, 7th round kind of guys that again probably aren't going to contribute a whole lot, but I don't know. I feel like that was a really big reach for a guy that's probably going to be a guard. If they could have traded down and got like an extra, mid-round pick or something out of it, that would have definitely at least made it easier for me to give him a better grade. So I think I'm just going to stick with the B- on that.
Yeah, I think
maybe a C+.
Gosh, I'm giving a lot of Bs. No, I'm with you. I'm going to go B- as well. So we'll switch over to our next division, which is just stick with the East. We'll go with the AFC East next. So looking at the AFC East, you have the Miami Dolphins, who started in the first round at 14 overall. They drafted wide receiver Devontae Parker out of Louisville. Really like the pick. I definitely think he's going to give Tannehill a big-time weapon to be able to throw the ball to. And then they went defensive tackle Jordan Phillips in the second round. Some people had him at possible first-round grade, and they were able to get him in the second round. And then they drafted an offensive lineman in the third round to help show up that line. But I tell you, I like their draft. I think getting Jordan Phillips and be able to put him next to Sue, and then they still have Cameron Wake. Obviously, I think they got really good value there. And I had touched a little bit on Parker and how I think he's gonna be able to give Tannehill a more reliable receiving target. I don't know, what were your thoughts though?
Yeah, Devontae, I think, was a really good steal. Did you see what his mom said? I think it was his mom.
Yeah, she said,
told the paper. Yeah, I'm glad that he went to Miami. We didn't want him being Cleveland. And that's when you know that your organization just has a not even against like the city of Cleveland, right? That's just has to be straight up the organization and how god awful they've been for. I think they've had like 1 or 2 playoff appearances since they came back after they moved to Baltimore, but that's a pretty dysfunctional place. I thought that was really funny. But he's a really good young receiver. Agree with Jordan Phillips. He's a guy that was getting a lot of late first round, I think, consideration from some. And then I don't think we should. Jay Ajayi, the running back, as well out of Boise, was a guy that slipped because they had some injury concerns. Now it might be a very big injury from what I've heard, and that's why he slipped so much to where he was at. But if he's able to overcome some of that, or if they can get him like rehabbed and he can live up to at least some of his potential, that's actually a pretty good steal. And I think we shouldn't sleep on Tony Lippett, who's a cornerback / wide receiver out of Michigan State. He played both. He actually performed really well at both when he was in college. So depending on whether they're going to use him, and how well he develops once he starts playing full-time on only one side of the ball, I think that's actually a really good pick. I like their draft. I'm going to give that one a B+. We're going B+ on that.
That's fair. I think I'm going to give the Dolphins. I'm going to give them a B. I like their class though. Definitely did a pretty solid job. Next up, we kind of touched on the. We'll go over the New England Patriots. You touched earlier about Malcolm Brown falling in their lap. Boy, it's almost one of those situations where the rich continue to get richer. Like they lost Vince Wilfork, and now they just get to plug in Malcolm Brown happens to fall to them. So I really like that pick. I feel like Jordan Richards is a guy that's going to be able to come in and help in the defensive secondary. Overall, they drafted, I feel like, quite a few defensive players, as they should. I feel like they did lose some defensive players from winning the Super Bowl last year. So, if Belichick is, as good of a coach as everyone thinks he is, he should have no problem coaching these guys up, plug them into the system, and they should do all right. But I do like what the Patriots did.
Yeah, it was. I think for me, it was almost like a weird draft where obviously day one, getting Malcolm Brown at 32 was a great value. No denying that, and probably a good thing they didn't trade out of that before they realized that Brown was falling. That's great. Day two for me was a little bit iffy. I think Richards was a little bit of a reach. Same with Grissom. I mean, they both are going to bring some ability, but I think they were taken a little too early. But then you look at day three, and it was almost like back up again. So it was kind of like this weird valley hill for them. Where days 1 and 3, I think they did a really good job adding some guys. AJ Derby, I think, is going to be a really good tight end in the NFL, especially when you can line him up with Gronk. They did draft a long snapper, which is kind of weird in the 5th round. So that was obviously a reach too. But I mean, if the guys apparently had like the best snap from last 10 years, it's a valuable position, I guess. Not that valuable, but valuable enough in their eyes. And so I think they did have a really good draft, especially with all the extra guys that they were able to take on day 7. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys, 8 guys taken in the last 4 rounds. So also don't sleep on Trey Flowers. He should be a pretty solid defensive end. I believe he's out of Arkansas, one of the best run-stopping defensive ends, which obviously they play kind of like a 3-4, 4-3 hybrid. So it's going to be a big value for them. I'll give this one like an A-. I actually really like their draft.
Nice. I think I'm going to give them a B+. So next up we have the New York Jets, who, boy, I tell you, looking at the Jets draft, I actually like it a lot. Can already tell I'm going to give them a good grade. First round, they draft arguably the best defensive player in the draft in Leonard Williams, and all of a sudden, wow, that defensive line rotation is just going to be crazy good. And then they followed up, and they are able to draft Devin Smith, wide receiver from Ohio State, who actually, when you think about it, they have Eric Decker, Brandon Marshall, now Devin Smith. That seems like a pretty good receiving core on paper, if you ask me. A guy who will be able to stretch the field as a vertical threat, should open up some of those underneath routes that like Decker and like Brandon Marshall, more possession type receiver routes that should help them out. And then on top of it, they get a guy who and Bryce Petty at quarterback, who I think a lot of people people had ranging grades, but for them to be able to get him, and if things with Geno don't work out, at least they have an option where they don't really know what they have and they can try and see what happens. I don't know. I like the Jets draft a lot, actually.
Yeah, they did a really good job. Obviously, Williams, some thought best player in the draft, get him at 6. He's obviously not a need with how good their defensive front is. But obviously, NFL, you don't keep guys forever. Contracts expire, or guys demand trades or get hurt and stuff like that. So you take the best player available. And then you got a great guy that can suit up and be in that front 3 for them. Petty and Smith are actually, I think, going to be great tandem there at quarterback and wide receiver, should Petty actually get to play. I think he had one of the highest ratings of any of the college draft-eligible quarterbacks this year on the deep pass, which Devin Smith, his specialty happens to be the deep ball. So, hey, look at that. They kind of match up perfectly with each other. So, yeah, that was a really good draft for them. I think that this one probably does deserve, I'd say, like a solid A. one of the better ones, even though it was such a short draft in terms of numbers. But they got at each position, I think, some great quality.
Yeah, I definitely give them an A as well. They had a fantastic draft. And the last team in the AFC East, we have the Buffalo Bills, who did not have a first-round pick. So their grade already, I mean, obviously they gave up their first-round pick to acquire Sammy Watkins last year. So with their first pick, they're able to take cornerback Ronald
Darby.
Ronald Darby. I will regret to say I don't know a lot about this guy, but looking at the list of players that they did draft, they got an offensive guard. Obviously, Rex Ryan likes to run the football. That's going to be a big part of their offense this year. Kind of a sleeper guy that I do like, though, is Nick O'Leary. Not exactly your super flashy tight end, but just an old school throwback player who's going to work his tail off and is going to be able to produce and is going to be relied upon, I think. He just does the dirty work, if you will. So I do really like that pick. But, yeah, overall, I'm going to give the Bills a C- here. What are your thoughts?
I'll give him the same grade. I do agree a lot, though, on Nick O'Leary. He was, the highest-rated tight end, I think, coming out of high school, going into college. But like you said, he's not the great athlete that some guys and some teams are looking for at that tight end spot nowadays. But he'll do a little bit of everything for you. Catch, he'll block, and he'll be a motion guy too if you want him to.
He's like you. Doesn't wear gloves.
No need when you got magic hands. All right. Carlos Williams. You know what? He's a guy that I think was a little bit better the year before he decided that he came into the draft. His final year in college wasn't as productive, but he's got some ability and talent there. But yeah, I mean, without the first, not really getting to me, even with trading up to get Sammy Watkins last year, like you can only count that as like half of a guy because he had to use 2 picks to get there. So yeah, it's a rough grade for me. I don't think there's many impact guys there. I'd probably give it like a C-.
Yep, I'm in agreement. So with that said, we'll jump over to we'll do the NFC West next. So the first team we touched on it earlier, but the Rams obviously clearly making a push that they want to establish the run. They draft Todd Gurley, number 10 overall. They then take Rob Havenstein, or some people call him Frankenstein.
Hey.
I'm just kidding. But, I mean, obviously, to draft him in the second round, they clearly want to establish the run game. Then they go back again in the third round, and they draft another offensive tackle out of Louisville. So, I mean, with their early picks, I mean, they made a – and then they drafted another offense. Wow, look at this. They drafted an offensive tackle in the fourth round out of Iowa. They drafted an offensive guard from Fresno State in the sixth round. They definitely said, hey, we want to run the football. Like, yeah, I'm clearly that's what I'm going to take away from the Rams.
What other teams are in that division, and what kind of style do they seem to play?
It's a copycat kind of thing, and the Seahawks play that style. The 49ers play that style. I'm not sure what style the Cardinals play offensively.
Yeah, they're a little bit different because Carson Palmer is actually Carson's not a guy that you're going to try to put on the move at all. And
I think they're a down-the-field passing team, personally, is what Bruce Arians wants to do.
But for the most part, I mean, you look at the defenses in that league, too, I think some teams sometimes have a little bit more success running right at them instead of trying to play, like, scheme-wise, especially with teams like Seattle and a little bit with San Francisco. So, obviously, Gurley, if you consider him to be that Adrian Peterson type, even though it wasn't necessarily a huge need because they had a couple of guys that played okay last year and showed some ability. I mean, if that's an Adrian Peterson type, you got to take him. I thought Havenstein, honestly, Wisconsin fans, we both watch Wisconsin football, still thought he was a little bit early.
I was surprised, I gotta say.
Yeah, he is that old school. Like you mentioned, they're going to want to establish the run, and he's going to be that right tackle that can help them out and do that. Just kind of bowl guys over there on the right side and open up some holes for their running back. They're going to be one of those teams now because their defense obviously has been really solid. That they're basically going to do like the ground and pound and then play defense. And if we can score and win some low scoring games, they'll be okay with that. Even with, they got a new quarterback, Nick Foles. Oh, and they drafted Sean Mannion, who I think somebody on Twitter said was like a poor man's Peyton Manning, which doesn't make any sense. I don't like the poor man's anything comparison because that means they're not close to them, really, in any manner. But he is a big body. It's an okay draft. A little weird, though, considering how many offensive linemen they decided to draft. But they got probably one of the better players, if not the best player, at the top there in Gurley. So it's kind of hard to grade because it started off well and just kind of drifted down from there. So B- ish.
I'm gonna give him a solid B. Solid B for me. Next up, we'll go to the Arizona Cardinals. They draft DJ Humphries out of Florida, offensive tackle. Carson Palmer, you gotta try to at least keep that guy healthy, and then they were able to. They drafted running back from Northern Iowa and David Johnson, so they did try to address the running back need at some point in this draft. Obviously, a lot of people thought Melvin Gordon was there, they'd be able to take him, but that definitely didn't come anywhere close to happening. But I think the big takeaway is by drafting the offensive tackle and showing up that line, hopefully, Carson Palmer, who's ever behind center, will have a little bit more time to pass the ball, and they might be able to establish the run game a little better.
Definitely. And that offensive line, I feel like every year that's something that I say about that team is needing help. Going all the way back to when they thought that kid out of Penn State was going to be as good as Joe Thomas. Now I don't even remember his name. So
he's not in the league anymore.
So it just kind of goes to show you a little bit about, that they've been trying to address that, I think, for a long time. They even took a guard again, top 10, a couple of years ago. Cooper? Was that them that took Cooper that early? So it's been a need for them for a long time. So, and I think they got one of the guys that could probably become he's definitely going to fill in right away. He's a good pass blocker as well, which when you have a statue in Carson Palmer who's coming off another injury, that's probably good to get some guys back there to keep the edge rushers off. And David Johnson, you mentioned him. He should fit in great. They needed a running back. He actually surprised a lot of people, I think, with his athleticism as well as his skill set when he came into the combine. And they did draft J.J. Nelson, who I think was a really little dude out of like UAB receiver or somewhere.
Yep.
The guy that ran really, really fast, but he's really, really small. But, hey, you pair him with John Brown. It's going to keep safeties. At least safeties probably can't jump up if both those guys are if J.J. makes a team. Obviously, his size could be a concern. But John Brown and him could run right by a lot of guys if they're peeking in the backfield too much. It was a pretty solid draft, I think, overall. Addressed a lot of different positions and needs. I'm thinking I'm going to give that an A-.
Wow. I think I'm going to give them a B+. Like you said, they did address areas of need, and they got some guys that should be able to definitely contribute and help them out next season. So looking at the San Francisco 49ers, this is one of the picks I think a lot of us – I don't remember. Did we get this one right? I don't know if I got it right.
No, well, I think you and I got it right, and Cortland decided to draft him for the Saints or something.
Yeah, you're right. Yep, that was it. So the 49ers draft Eric Armstead, defensive lineman out of Oregon. A lot of people had him slated to go to the 49ers, and he will be able to help on that defensive line. Obviously, 49ers had a rough offseason, so for them getting they went defense early. I mean, you look at it, they did Armstead, they get oh boy, I don't even know how to pronounce this. It's from Samford. They got Jaquiski Tart, strong safety from Samford. Then drafted Eli Harold out of Virginia. A lot of people liked him, outside linebacker. So I mean, they went early to address some of their defensive needs. And then looking at these guys, I mean, I honestly, they drafted a punter in the 5th round. Anyways, looking at this draft, I mean, clearly they wanted to go early with the defense and try and shore up the defense and get back to the type of defense that was getting them into the NFC Championship game routinely.
Who's going to be their other inside linebacker with Lamar Bowman?
Maybe that kid from Virginia? I don't know. I have no idea.
Maybe they slide one of the other outside backers in on occasional downs. But, yeah, I mean, Armstead's good. Honestly, I'm not huge on, many, if any, of the safeties that were in this year's draft. So I don't know. I don't know if I like taking one there in the second just because I don't value any of these guys that high. But you're right. Eli Harold was a great pick. I think Blake Bell at tight end is a solid one. Mike Davis was pretty solid too. I mean, they had a solid first and second day. But yeah, that third day was a little weird. I mean, taking a punter. Come on, guys. Come on. His first name is Busta. Not a big fan of that either. So, regardless of his talent, Kearney, he was almost Mr. Irrelevant. I don't know. It was good. It was one of those days I kind of just angled down also. Hey, phone number, I'm not answering you. I'm going to give it a B-.
Sorry, I'm with you. I'm going to give the 49ers a B- as well. And the last team in this division is the Seattle Seahawks, who did not have a first-round pick because they traded it to acquire Jimmy Graham. But looking at their draft, they did draft the defensive end Frank Clark out of Michigan, who I think had some off-the-field baggage. So
he hit a woman, apparently hard. Got the team.
So that is interesting. They drafted Tyler Lockett, wide receiver out of Kansas, and I gotta say, I'm just the Seahawks kind of have a system and it works really good for them, but for me, it just kind of leaves me scratching my head a little bit because, I mean, as far as the offensive line addressed, they did draft 2 guards in the 4th rounds, and they added some defensive players later in the rounds. But I guess their early picks, I feel like I wouldn't be able to name off the top of my head what other receivers were available when Tyler Lockett was on the board, but I just feel like they already had a little speed guy in Paul Richardson, and now they just added another guy who is really small but will be fast. It's like, can't you give Russ some maybe they plan on splitting Jimmy Graham out wide. I don't know.
Well, Lockett's going to add, I think, a lot of return skills. He's one of the better return guys that was in the draft, too. So no longer having a guy like Percy or Golden Tate back to return, he had some value there. Speaking of Percy being gone, I guess you could almost view him as like that. I don't think he's like as skilled as Percy, but like what they probably view him as is something similar, and you just get him the ball in space and let him do some things. And yeah, drafting essentially Jimmy Graham with your first pick, but you had to give up, a center to do so as well. I don't know. It was a not great draft. I'm not a fan of drafting Frank Clark either, considering some of these other guys and how far they fell. I think what Frank Clark did would probably caused him to fall as much, if not more.
Yeah.
So I think, honestly, Lockett's probably the best pick they had, and that wasn't until, one of the last picks there, I think, in the 3rd round. Not a huge fan of much else in that draft. So I'm probably going to give – they're not getting a good grade, C-.
Yeah, I give them
depending on if I've been drinking, it might be a D+.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a C. So looking at the AFC West, we'll start with the San Diego Chargers. they land one of our favorite players in Melvin Gordon. He was super excited to go to San Diego. I gotta say, I don't usually go to the San Diego Chargers website on a regular basis at all, and I actually went to the site and watched a little bit of him being introduced, and so that was pretty cool. I got to see Philip Rivers' reaction to getting to meet Melvin. He seemed pretty fired up about it, so that was kind of cool. But they draft Gordon. They get Denzel Perryman, who a lot of people liked. Just those two picks alone, I mean, those guys are going to be two starters that should play very, very well for them.
Probably doesn't speak much that they had to draft a second inside linebacker in the second round. Manti Te'o.
And they just took Te'o.
Not playing up to these expectations.
That's true. So I mean, obviously they draft him and Perryman and a guy that can contribute or push Manti Te'o to perhaps play better.
Definitely, yeah. They did. We talked about it earlier. They had to move up to get Melvin because Todd Gurley had gone so early. So, but they got their guy. They seemed really high on him, and they weren't going to let anyone else kind of get in the way of them getting who their dude was. And you got to applaud someone for that instead of just kind of sitting there hoping a guy falls. You know, if you grade a guy that highly, go get him. Yeah, I like Perryman too, and I think actually the cornerback Craig Major was a really solid pick too. I mean, he's a little bit of a sleeper, but he's actually a really good athlete. And their secondary again wasn't one of their strong suits, I don't think. So to be able to get three guys, I think that three guys out of only 5 picks that I think should be able to contribute. If not this year, all of them, they should be contributing at some point early in their careers to helping San Diego win. I thought they had an okay draft. Somebody give them a B.
I am also giving them a B. I agree with you. I mean, I really like their first few picks, and then obviously, they didn't have a ton of picks after that. Only had, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks total. They obviously did some moving around to get Gordon. But yeah, solid B nonetheless. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs took a little bit of a gamble on Marcus Peters, the cornerback out of Washington. A guy that they had some off the field. Well, actually more. I don't know if you call it off the field or on the field when you get in fights and arguments and headbutt fellow teammates. And then get yourself kicked out of the team. Some people, though, thought that he was, as far as a pure corner perspective, that he might be the best corner. So for them, I guess, to be able to grab him at 18, he should be able to contribute and help their defense right away. Then they drafted they went offensive guard to help shore up the offensive line because we all know that with Jamal Charles, they really want to run the football well, and they obviously did a good job with that so far. I don't know. What do you think of this class?
I think Peters might take like a year or two before he's like fully ready to reach his potential and play a lot, kind of like Jimmy Smith, was for Baltimore. But if he can become a Jimmy Smith type player who, before his injury, was actually probably one of the better corners in the league this year. Obviously, that's a great pick at 18. Their second pick was Mitch Morris. I think some thought he was a guard, but I think Cortland mentioned it too. They only had like one center or something, or one interior with like true offensive lineman on the roster coming in. So I think to get a guy that should be able to come in and contribute was big for them and give them some depth, because their other guy I think was like a 6th rounder or something from like a year or two ago. So to get a guy that should probably push for a starting spot this year was solid. I'm not big on Chris Conley, the receiver. He's a good workout guy. He looked good at the combine running in shorts other than trying to catch the ball, which, again, as a receiver, seemed to be an issue, though. They did show some highlights during the draft, where he made like a nice one-handed catch. But, I'd like to see probably a little bit more consistency other than just being a really good athlete for me to like draft a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds especially. So, I mean, I don't know. It was kind of like a hit or miss. I liked their first 2 picks. Third one, not so much. But they had a lot of picks, in the 4th through 7th round. It looks like a bunch of dudes went to like 6, 7 guys there, and just out of probability, 1 or 2 of those guys is probably going to end up hitting, just based on the numbers and averages. So I think in the end, they probably get like 3, 4 guys that can contribute at some point in their careers for this team. So that's a pretty good draft in my mind, and I'll give them, like a B plus. So it's a little bit better, I think, than what San Diego did, just from a number standpoint.
Sure. I think I'm going to give them a B as well. So next up, we have the Oakland Raiders, who I believe you were correct on this pick in saying that they would take Amari Cooper. I was really upset that I was not correct. So obviously they give Derek Carr arguably the best receiver in this class. And then they end up taking Mario Edwards Jr. in the 2nd round out of Florida State, defensive tackle, help shore up that defense. A pick I like that they took, they actually got Clyde Wolford, the tight end out of Miami, who I think a lot of people thought was the 2nd best tight end in the class behind Max Williams, and they were able to get him. And I don't know, I think Carr now has, some decent targets to throw the ball to. And, they went defense and defense. They drafted a couple offensive linemen, a receiver here or there. But ultimately, the strength of this is, Amari Cooper, and hoping that he's able to help Derek Carr continue to grow as a quarterback.
Definitely. And I thought Cooper was the best receiver the entire process. I know after the combine, people saw him run. Kevin White, lapped Cooper, but I kept Cooper at number 1 on my receivers for the entire process. So that's, this was 2 straight years, I think, that Oakland and Reggie McKenzie have done a really good job in the draft in taking the best player that they could take, especially, at that spot. What were they? Were they at 3 or something like that last year too, where they kind of had some choices? Leonard Williams again was still there for them this year, but
yep, they're at 3.
They got Cooper, best receiver. They got Edwards Jr., the defensive lineman, can play anywhere on that line and take some pressure, I think, off of some of their edge rushers, especially Khalil Mack. You mentioned Walford, and hey, Ben Heaney, I think that's his name, that linebacker. If you perverts out there watching this and you want to look somebody up, look up his girlfriend, all right? I'm just throwing that out there. They drafted a great player there just for that reason. She'll fit right in with those cheerleaders or something. So, yeah, I think – but you mentioned they drafted 3 straight linebackers, though. That is weird. But it was a pretty good draft, too, and that's, like I said, 2 straight years of a good Oakland Raiders draft. I'll give them an A-.
Nice. I'm going to give them a B+, I believe. I like the draft, though. It's like you mentioned, 2 straight years of doing good. Smart move not to fire Reggie McKenzie. That's all I have to say.
We thought that he might have been gone after last year, which we had constantly said would have been a terrible mistake.
It would have been an awful decision.
But, yeah, it looks like they're moving in the right direction at this point. Now, whether it turns into wins or not, I don't know. I guess, that's some coaching and some development. But at least it appears like they're building a lot of talent and skill on that team.
Yeah. And the last team in this division is the Denver Broncos. And they did provide one of the few shockers of the first round. They traded up and they drafted Shane Ray, the defensive end outside linebacker out of Missouri. Boy, I gotta say, if I didn't see a lot on this guy, but I did see a couple interviews after he got drafted, and he seemed very humbled. And boy, I tell you what, he seemed fired up. I feel like he's going to be a big part of their defense, and apparently he models his game after Von Miller, and now he gets to play with the guy. So, yeah.
They're very similar, size, everything else. I think they break down to be very, very similar players.
Size, motor, hustle to get to the ball. And he gets to play in a rotation with DeMarcus Ware. Or Von Miller. All of a sudden, wow, just they should be able to get to the quarterback, I think. And then they draft offensive tackle out of Colorado State. Don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm not going to try. But obviously, you can never have too many guys to protect Peyton Manning, who is obviously a statue. Gotta keep him strong in the pocket. And then kind of an underrated guy that I liked was Jeff Heuerman, the tight end out of Ohio State. A guy who, especially in in Peyton Manning's type offense, a guy who, and Gary Kubiak's the coach now, right? For Denver. I mean, a guy that, Owen Daniels would be able to tell you all about how he likes to use tight ends, and Peyton Manning likes throwing the tight ends. I think he could be an underrated guy who could make a definite contribution to the team.
Yeah, he should be a guy that does contribute early, and that's because, you mentioned it. I think Owen Daniels is on the team now. They ended up picking him up after he played with them. He basically played with Kubiak everywhere because he was also in Baltimore last year,
Baltimore. Yep.
So his whole career has basically been with him. But Owen's not a great blocker, and Heuerman might have been the best blocking tight end in the draft. So, they'll match up well, especially in the two tight end set. But he does have some really good hands as well. Not necessarily he's a pretty good athlete, actually. He's not the worst athlete ever. So he's not going to replace, the production that they had at the tight end spot last year. But I think with the two of them and the way that offense is going to be structured, they'll have a lot of production out of that tight end spot. Shane Ray is obviously a great player. Had some trouble beforehand. The draft with I think he got pulled over with weed citation or something like that. And everyone, of course, made a bunch of jokes about how, hey, he's in Colorado, so he can get away with that now, sort of stuff. Which is true, with the exception
as long as it's not in his bloodstream.
So, they got some good players there, especially the top three. I don't know what Trevor Siemian brings to the team. Quarterback from Northwestern. I don't know. There's probably just some other picks here and there, but that's nitpicking, I think, once you get in the 5th, 6th, 7th round kind of value. It was an okay draft. It's probably, I think, in my opinion, one of the least favorite in the division, though. So I think I'm going to give it like a C+.
Jeez, being harsh on the Bronco, I'm giving it a B.
Oh, he's putting his fist on the table.
I like the Shane Ray pick, and he's going to make you eat your words, Brett, for bashing on his draft class.
He might. It's just, I don't know about the rest of the guys.
You mean getting one possible Pro Bowl player isn't good enough for you? Come on.
We'll see what happens. This is what makes it all the fun.
That's true. How are we doing for time on this podcast?
I have no idea. It's been a while.
Because I feel like we should
break this up.
Maybe
we'll do
break this in two. We'll do part 1 and part 2. This will be part 1, and part 2 will cover the AFC and NFC North, and the AFC South and the NFC South. That way, we're not dragging on super long, and it'll give us. We'll be able to talk in detail with those teams and give them their fair share of time as well. So, I think we're gonna split this into 2 shows. So, hopefully, we'll be able to get this out sometime this weekend or something. If we have some free time, we'll get together and get this part 2 podcast out. But so any other thoughts you got, Brett?
And I think what I'll do too is kind of like what I did with the draft, kind of compile everything and just do like small quick write-ups for the 2 of us, and I can put that on the website too. So if people don't want to sit through 2 podcasts, they can look for something on the website as well and do some comments, and we can have some discussion on there as well with whoever looks that up.
There you go. That's a good idea as well. So we'll get putting that together, and we'll get the part 2 podcast out here hopefully within the next few days. So until then.